Communications and Outreach for the Jacobs Institute. I appreciate you joining us for our first ever Jacobs Institute Zoom internship presentation for 2020. These are unusual times. As quarantine orders were put in place, we contemplated how to handle the internship program. We contemplated how to handle the internship program. Our top priority, as always, is the safety of our interns and staff. While we assessed whether to postpone the summer program, we also contemplated a creative solution. The unique situation we were in called for a reinvention of our existing program. At the JI, we are nothing if not innovative. It's at the core of what we do. The Jacobs Institute is a nonprofit medical device innovation center focused on accelerating the development of technologies to treat vascular diseases, such as heart attack and stroke. Many medical device companies and entrepreneurs face long timelines to innovate and develop products. The JI reduces this problem by having all of the resources to innovate in one place. We are strategically located above Kaleida Health's Gates Vascular Institute and below University at Buffalo's Clinical and Translational Research Center. This positions us in the heart of a state-of-the-art clinical facility and world-class research facility with access to clinical experts, leading researchers, and experienced engineers. Our I2R, or Idea to Reality Center, is meant to fast-track the innovation process by integrating physician and engineer feedback in real time to bring devices to patients faster and save lives. It's built on collisions and collaboration. We have the right people in the right place at the right time in the product development cycle. So we brought this innovative spirit to the internship program and created virtual and hybrid internships tailored to each of the 4 interns, making the impossible possible. We welcome this stellar group of 4 interns who committed to this unique spin on our traditional summer program, which we've been doing since 2013. This year, our all-female group of all-stars are Sarah, Emma, Juliana, and Katie. Sarah is our education intern. She's a rising junior at University of Buffalo, currently in a 5-year program to receive a bachelor's in history and a master's in education. Emma Stedman is one of our engineering interns. She's a rising junior studying mechanical engineering at Duke University. Juliana Kirsten is one of our engineering interns. She's a rising junior studying biomedical engineering at Purdue University. Katie Simon is our communications intern. She is a master's student at Pennsylvania State University studying communication science with a focus on interpersonal and health communication. The interns will share their presentations and then we'll take questions for the interns at the end. You can submit your questions in the chat window, which may be at the bottom or the top of your screen with a little speech bubble icon. You can type them in there and then I'll moderate that later. Without further delay, here are your 2020 summer interns. And take it away, Sarah.
Hello, my name is Sarah Wack, and I was the Jacobs Institute Summer Education Intern. You might be wondering what the history major is doing with the Medical Innovation Center, but I was really drawn to this internship because of the opportunity to work with area high school students. I have experience working with a lot of younger audiences, but I'm so fascinated with what high school students are learning today, and the JI gave me the opportunity to really work with them this summer. So usually the college education intern helps host about 10 area high school students downtown at the JI. But in light of the health crisis, we decided to go completely virtual. We organized a 4-part webinar series with Dr. Ken Snyder targeted at high school students interested in medicine, technological innovation, really with any passion. Week 1 and week 2 of the internship mostly consisted of behind the scenes work. So I worked on making the RSVP for the webinar series, and I reached out to a lot of different educators across Western New York to try to encourage students to attend. We had such an amazing turnout. We had over 60 attendees per episode, over like 30 schools represented. We had about 20 public schools being represented from Western New York in each episode as well. And we had students beyond Western New York, including Connecticut, which was just amazing within itself. What I also did during this time was work on a research guide for high school students. The webinar series was such an inspiring thing to watch, and it really made you, like, after finishing it, you felt like, I want to go like Google that thing I've been wondering for a long time. But often we don't know where to start and what's a good source and how to use this source. So I worked on this research guide to help encourage students to seek out more information about that topic they're really interested in. It mostly consists of a compilation of public databases, how to go about finding a good resource and how to use it to understand what you're learning about, and also a citation style guide. Week 3 and week 4 was kind of the big bulk of the internship, because this is when we launched the actual webinar series. So week 3, we had Dr. Ken Snyder host 2 episodes, and he's just was an amazing host. Within the first 5 minutes of the episode, he's showing a live surgery of like an aneurysm being clipped. It was insane to watch, and a lot of the high school students really loved it. We sent out a survey to get feedback for each episode to see how we can strengthen and improve the webinar series. And a lot of the feedback basically consisted of like, this is stuff that we never got in the high school classroom. And they just really loved having the opportunity to learn about this. Included here is a photo of Dr. Ken Snyder explaining a CT perfusion scan to discuss how this is used to help diagnose stroke, something that isn't really typically brought up in a regular high school setting, but we had the opportunity to learn about this summer. Week 4, we had 2 more episodes, but we also invited special guest Dr. Thomas Hughes. Dr. Snyder was very diligent in reading the survey responses and wanted to know how to shape the webinar series to how the students really wanted. And a lot of students were asking, can we discuss COVID-19? So Dr. Snyder really took that to heart, and he invited Dr. Thomas Hughes to join us for the final 2 episodes. Dr. Hughes works in Western New York, and he's been working diligently with the COVID-19, and they were able to have a discussion on screen and go back and forth. It was really amazing to see this, to have these 2 physicians discussing these ideas and shooting ideas back and forth, and it was really engaging for the audience. And it really helped clarify a lot of the questions the students are facing, especially in this troubling time. Included here is a photo of Dr. Hughes above here. He was showing how physicians in New York were discussing the COVID-19 with physicians in China. So kind of showing this collaboration like across continents as well too. This webinar series really resulted in this community being formed. Dr. Snyder, in many of his stories, would talk about how he's working with this cardiologist and this technician to better help the patient. And then when he brought on Dr. Hughes, we were able to really see that happen, this collaboration, as they're bouncing ideas back and forth. And we wanted to emulate that as well for the students. So first thing we did was we uploaded everything to YouTube. So if there was a friend of a student who attended and they were unable to attend the live session themselves, they can, shoot the YouTube link off to their friend, and then they can discuss it and really engage in the material being discussed. We also created a Slack channel for the students. Basically, Slack is a professional texting service. It was completely voluntary, but it gave them the opportunity to reach out to us at the JI, to learn more information about the JI, to get in contact with Dr. Snyder and with Dr. Hughes, who were open to answering any questions that they had. We also had an incentive for attending the live sessions, just to really encourage turnout, but we had such an amazing turnout anyways. But the incentive was if you attended at least 3 of the 4 live sessions, you had the opportunity to be put in a drawing to meet with Dr. Snyder in a smaller Zoom call. And I think we really had a great turnout with that too, for everyone wants that chance to really pick apart his brain and learn more, because he really makes it not a lecture, the webinar series, is more of a dialogue, which was just an amazing thing to have this summer since we're all kind of cooped up indoors. The internship, the virtual internship with the JI was an amazing opportunity. I had walked in thinking that I'd be able to have these experiences with just maybe about 10 high school students over the summer, but I had the opportunity to connect with students all over Western New York, throughout New York State and even beyond New York State, which was an experience within itself. And it really was an amazing opportunity for the students. So many logged on and they kept logging on because it was such an amazing thing to, have this chance to learn about that topic they're really interested in and to even learn more about COVID-19, which is something I think that's really at the forefront of all our minds. But it was just such an amazing opportunity, and the JI did an excellent thing for all of us this summer with this program. Thank you. I would now like to introduce Emma, who will share her internship experience.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Emma. I was one of the engineering interns, but before I talked about my engineering project, I wanted to tell you a little bit about how I got here and how before I even stepped into the JI this summer, the JI had already taught me and inspired me so much. So 4 years ago, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I did a bunch of educational summer camps and things like that. And the first one I went to was Camp Neuro, which is as it sounds, a neuroscience and medical camp at UB. And during this camp, I got to do a lot of cool things. I even got to dissect a sheep brain, which you can see me doing here. But the most transformative thing that I got to do was actually attend the JI. And Allison did a mini brain boot camp. We got to hear from a panelist of doctors, and as you can see here, even got to use one of the simulation machines. But the biggest impact was that it was the first time I really learned what engineering was and got to actually interact with engineers. And I learned that engineering was all about problem solving and design and innovation, which was really interesting to me and it inspired me a lot. And so 4 years ago, I told myself that one day I would work at the JI. And 4 years later, here I am. So I think that just kind of shows how truly impactful the webinar series and all the other educational initiatives that the JI is doing, the work that Sarah is doing is super important. The JI not only is revolutionizing healthcare, but truly inspiring the next generation of leaders and engineers and healthcare workers, surgeons, everything in between. So just want to thank the JI for inspiring me 4 years ago and inspiring me again this summer. So this summer, as I said, I was really excited about problem solving. That's why I wanted to go into engineering. So this summer, I was really excited when I was just given one big problem to solve, and that was my project. So the JI 3D prints vascular models, which engineers use to test their medical devices on, and surgeons will use for surgery planning and things like that. And my goal was to improve one of the inspection steps in the production of these models. The step that I was improving is called the in-process flow inspection, and that's where we ensure that there's no more 3D printing support material left in the models. So I wanted to make a new method for that would more confidently and efficiently confirm that. I'll go into and explain this a little bit more. So when we 3D print, we have lots of support material that's used to build up the model that will then be removed after printing. So as you can see here, these are our models before and after they've been processed. And it's really easy to see that the printing support has been removed from the outside, but it's a little bit harder to tell if the printing support has been removed from the inside. So that's why we use the process that I just referenced, the in-process flow inspection. And in the current method, the engineer will pinch off the vessels and try to see if you pinch off all of these vessels, then does the other one have water flowing through it while you're allowing water to flow through all of them. And this method works, but I wanted to improve upon this current method for a few different reasons. The first is you might not have understood the method I just explained because it's kind of ambiguous, it's kind of hard to explain, and so that's not great when you're trying to scale up and have more engineers working on a method of cleaning. You want it to be consistent, and so if it's this ambiguous method, that's not going to work as well. Additionally, we can always, as I learned this summer, there's always room for improvement. And if we can catch these occlusions or blockages earlier in the process and not catch them at the quality control stage, we'll save a lot of time and money. And so we just wanted to come up with a new method that would improve upon our current one. So I started to brainstorm a lot of different solutions. And the first one that I got really excited about was the idea of using thermal imaging. So when I was observing one of the JI engineers, Cody, clean out the vessels, he said that he could tell if he needed more cleaning out to do because there would be when the warm water is flowing through, if one of the branches is cold, then there's probably not warm water flowing through. So I thought, well, why don't we quantify this, make it really evident and not have to just touch all the models, let's just see it all at once. And let's use a really fancy thermal imaging camera that would show that. And that if there was a bluer part or a colder part, then you would have an occlusion and you would need to clean that part out. I got really excited about this and I started doing some initial testing and to validate that yes, there is definitely a change in temperature, but this change in temperature is only about 7 to 8 degrees Celsius. And although there's definitely a change in temperature, in order to have a thermal imaging camera that would accurately pick up all these really tiny, minute changes in temperature, it would be incredibly expensive. Because at the JI, we need something that can be calibrated. We care a lot about quality. So I would be asking the Jacobs Institute to spend tens of thousands of dollars on just one thermal imaging camera. And if we wanted to expand more, that would be really expensive. So I realized it's not just about the best idea or the coolest idea, it has to be a practical idea too. So I pivoted to a solution that had been thrown around before. And that was the idea of using tracing dye. So as you can see here, we have the tracing dye going through and it's clear, well, if the idea is that if there's tracing dye going through a vessel, then it must be clear. And we actually got to compare it to our fluoroscope, which is what we use in the quality control step. And we found consistent results. And this is pretty interesting because this quality control stage wasn't what I was trying to fix. But it's potential that this tracing dye could lead to not only replacing our in-process flow inspection, but our flow inspection after everything. And that could also save a lot of time and money instead of using a fluoroscope and an x-ray machine. So it sounds really great. So why didn't I do that from the beginning? Well, I didn't do it from the beginning because it has a really complicated setup and you have all these moving parts to set up a flow loop, to insert the dye, everything like that. So I didn't like that and I didn't want to do it, but I knew the dye worked really well. So I came up with a compromise solution to create a transportable in-process inspection station that uses the dye. So it would still be efficient. We wouldn't be running around the JI to collect all these materials, and we would be accurately measuring using the tracing dye. So I designed this whole tub that in theory you would just engineer would take the tub and then only have to take about 2 things out and then inspect the model. So to start, I drew up a little sketch in SolidWorks, which is a computer design software. And I designed it, and the idea was that we would order parts and have them show up, and I would build it from there. Unfortunately, our parts quite literally got lost in the mail, but we pivoted a little and used what we had to create up with a lower fidelity solution, but it worked really well actually. And so here's what we made. And so this is the idea is this tub would be sitting in storage and you would pick it up and it has absolutely everything you need. And then I was able to take some really great footage with Paul. And so here's kind of what would be happening. The engineer would take it out, start setting it up. And then as you can see here, we have a manifold, there's the water buckets. All of this was in the tub and now you're just taking it out and placing your model in. So there's a catheter to insert the dye, a manifold to differ where the water is going. And then here you can see how it works. So we're just inspecting one bundle at a time and you can see the tracing dye goes great through. You can easily tell where the dye is and isn't flowing. Here we see a close-up visual. Clearly we would be able to see that all of these vessels are clear. We don't need to go out and clean them more. And then here we actually blocked off a vessel and clearly you can see that it's blocked off. There's not dye going through, which means we would need to go out and clean it. So overall, this is kind of what it would look like. And you would insert the catheter and pick the bundle that you want to inspect at that time. So I want to thank Paul for helping me take this really amazing footage yesterday. I really appreciate it, which is awesome. So there are a lot of benefits to this new proposed solution. The first is because there's a manifold, you can easily inspect one bundle at a time. So you can open and close the ports so you can connect to whichever bundle of vessels you want to inspect at a time, which is really great. Also doesn't require randomized pinching. Again, it's a little bit more methodical, and you know exactly which ones you're doing at a time. And we don't want to be pinching vessels as much as possible, because pinching could lead to tears, and then we have to spend more time to repair those tears before we send them off to our clients. Also, it doesn't rely on a sink, so that way we only have one sink in the testing room, so that way lots of models could be tested at once, and if someone's working with a sink, you don't have to wait for that. It can also be easily stored and transported, so it can be done anywhere, again, which is great for when as the JI scales upwards, we can have more and more people working on this. It's also an easier cleanup. When you detach all the tubing from your model, there's still water inside your model. And the great thing about it being in a tub is that the water just goes in there and you can just pour out the tub later. I was really nervous about spilling water everywhere when I was starting to test this method, and so that removes that error. It's also inexpensive and expandable, again, which is great as the JI scales up. We're just using tracing dye. We're not asking the JI to buy 10 to 30, whatever it may be, thermal imaging cameras that will be really expensive. It's also clear instructions. I think this is one of the most important things, is when I wouldn't be confident in doing the first method that they showed me, pinching off the vessels. If I was asked to do that, I wouldn't know how to do that. I wouldn't be able to confidently say that I inspected the model well enough. But if you told me with a work instruction, if you see dye going through, it's good. If you don't, it's bad. And that I could understand, and I think most people could understand that. And it's a lot clearer instructions, and that's great for as a JI moves forward in production. So this sounds really great, but before we can actually implement it, we need to validate it. So a little bit more than we already even have. We would want to compare it with the existing method even more, and also analyze the impact of the dye on the model. We don't want anything that's going to be hurting our models, and unfortunately, I don't have time in my short 6 weeks to do that, but hopefully that can be done in the future. And if all goes as planned and everything looks great, then we can finalize and implement new work instructions following the JI's quality guidelines. So I just want to thank the JI again for everything this summer. I was a hybrid intern, so I was in office Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and working virtually Tuesday, Thursday. But no matter where I was learning a lot, whether it was throwing things together last minute with Mark this week, or helping Dan with this new cool process that I just learned within the last week. I learned a lot throughout the way, and thank you so much for everything. And now I'm going to hand off to one of the other great people I met this summer, which is Juliana, one of our other engineering interns.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining in on the webinar today. My name is Juliana Kirsten, and I will be discussing with you non-conforming product reports, where quality meets innovation. But before we begin, I want to share with you my why. I always loved helping people, and I had a passion for technology. And so one of the reasons why I became a biomedical engineer was to help bridge that gap between the technology advancements that are in our society today and helping people in need. And I learned after just a short 6 weeks at the JI, that's exactly what they do. They foster these intentional collisions between their physicians, engineers, entrepreneurs, and industry representatives to be able to come to one place, the JI, to collaborate, innovate, and to make people's lives better. The Jacobs Institute was recently ISO 13485 certified, and that means that they're now a member of the International Organization for Standardization for Medical Devices. But that's a lot of words. What does that mean? It means that they are committed to performing high quality models to their clients. But what is really quality? Quality, if you look in Google, is defined as the standard of something as measured against other things of a similar kind. For example, take this photograph. Would you consider this a high quality photo? Probably not, especially if you compare it to the photo on the right. But what's the major difference between these two photos? You'd probably point out there's a big smudge on the photo on the left. But why did this happen? Why do these two pictures come out differently? They came out differently because the photographer in the left photo neglected to ensure all of his equipment was working properly. However, on the right-hand side, the photographer noticed the smudge on his lens and was able to correct it. And that's exactly what the JI does. Their mission is to accelerate the development of next-generation technologies. That means they're not afraid to fail. but they want to fail early and they want to fail fast so that they have time to pivot and improve their technologies. These are one of the models that they create, similar to what Emma had said. And so they want to be ensuring all of the models that are created are up to a high standard. And so that is where my project objective takes place. I was set out to improve the process of tracking and trending on the model variations related to production at the JI. This included developing a communication tool to be used when non-conforming products were found, and to establish variation codes used in investigative reporting. By doing all of these steps, I was helping the JI move from paper paper documentation to software validation. But why is this important? Capturing this data is crucial to the evolution of the JI as we look to grow our design and production capabilities. JI makes tons of these models, and within their production, of course, there's going to be a few variations, but the JI has been committed to improving these models and improving their mishaps within their model production. When the JI creates a 3D model, printed model, it can take 2 steps. Either model development, which includes the creation of the 3D printed documents, and the paperwork, like the traveler and work instructions. It then goes through model processing, which is the actual execution of these work instruction steps. Every single model that the JI produces goes through a quality control check. This makes sure all of the models that JI produces are up to the highest standard. But like I have said, in creating so many models, there's going to be some variation, and that's when a non-conforming report is filed, or an NCR. Non-conforming product reporting happens when there's a variation in the production. When someone detects a variation, they notify the quality team, and they provide a short description of what happened. The quality team then develops the NCR document itself and does a root cause analysis investigation. But that's a lot of words, so I'm going to take you through an example. When a non-conforming product is discovered, whether it's a poor print quality or a leak, oftentimes the person who found it will send an email to the engineering team, and they'll list the events of what happened and to what kind of model. But oftentimes, the preliminary information that is given isn't what all of the engineers are looking for, resulting in a long email chain. My proposed solution to fix this problem was to standardize the collection tool, known as the NCR questionnaire. This form could be filled out as soon as a non-conforming product is identified, either on a tablet or even on a smartphone. The NCR questionnaire included a lot of questions to try to pinpoint where in the process there was a mistake. I think the most important and valuable question that was asked was if an image or video could be uploaded of the non-conforming product. This question allowed all of the engineers at the JI to be on the same page and to see a visual representation of what was happening. Now, why is this used? Why did we collect all of this information? We collected it to track and trend to improve the production. At the JI, through this graph, we're now able to measure and see where in a process there could be problems and where we can improve our process. And so one of the main points that I want to make in my project as well was that I standardized the nonconformance coding. By doing so, I helped all of the engineers at the JI get on the same page for when they noticed something was wrong in their process. But like all communication tools or any tool that is used in engineering, it must be validated. And so therefore, I helped create and model a proposed protocol that enlisted the user, traceability, security, and system requirements, and then the expected output. I think back on my project and my communication tool, and it reminded me of a quote by Peter Drucker, who was a management thinker. He said, "You can't manage what you can't measure." And I think my communication tool helps the JI measure where they're at currently so they can help manage for a better tomorrow. Unfortunately, I was only at the JI for 6 weeks, and so I wasn't fully able to transition to their quality management software, but I was able to provide them a transition document to smooth this process. Some key learnings that I took away from this internship was that data drives strategy and processes for continuous improvement, not just for a better tomorrow, but for a better 5 years or 10 years down the line. I also learned the importance of production requirements, and I learned foundational knowledge in cardio and neurovascular anatomy through Dr. Ken Snyder's webinar that Sarah had mentioned previously. Finally, I learned flexibility in a pandemic-driven world. I never experienced my internship would be hybrid, but as you can see, I was able to go onto the JI's site on Tuesdays and Thursdays to really get the experience of how JI operates. With that, I'd like to especially thank my mentor, Laura Marin, Mike Springer, Mark, Ariana, and Cody for especially giving me feedback during my project work. Thank you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Katie to have her share her experience.
Hi everyone, I'm Katie Simon, and as the communications intern, it's my job to amplify the mission of the JI, which is to accelerate the development of next generation technologies in vascular medicine through collisions of physicians, engineers, entrepreneurs, and industry. And we can do that by fostering our own communication collisions to advance the future of medicine at the JI. In this presentation, I'm going to be showing you how my virtual perspective helped me with my projects on the future of medicine, social media, philanthropy, the 3D map, and then I'll leave you with some actionable items that you can do at home to help us with this mission as well. I had a very unique perspective going into this internship. Because of COVID-19, my entire internship was online. So this whole time I was basically in my living room on my computer doing my internship. But what I think that afforded me was a really unique outsider perspective where I was essentially both the audience and the writer in terms of language and understanding of the JI, which helped me a lot going through my internship in all my facets of the internship. So the first facet was future of medicine. Now, what does that mean? Don't worry, I'm going to take you through it. There's 3 components of the future of medicine. The first is the Future of Medicine report, which was a book published in 2017 that looked at the next quarter century of medicine and development in healthcare and medicine. And these chapters in the Future of Medicine report help to inform our podcast, which is called Journey into the Future of Medicine with Bill Maggio. And it includes interviews with leading physicians, researchers, healthcare and medical device industry executives, entrepreneurs, and more. And they discussed upcoming trends in healthcare and medicine in order to help you, the viewers, make more informed decisions about your healthcare. It is streaming anywhere that you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so many more. And we have 4 episodes currently, and our most recent one is called What's the Forecast? Predicting Disease with Big Data and Artificial Intelligence with Dr. Jason Davies. So be sure to check that out. But my impact on this project was the promotional plan. So I was figuring out how we could get more people to listen to the podcast through social media and other initiatives, as well as writing closing script statements in order to connect more with our audience at the end and shouting out certain audience members. The third component of the Future of Medicine is the Future of Medicine event, which will be held through a Zoom webinar, much like this one, on Thursday, September 17th at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The topic is COVID-19 and its effect on the future of medicine. And we'll be discussing that with leading experts in the field, like Stephen Morrison, who will be discussing public health, Stephen Galster, who will be discussing zoonotic disease transmission, Amar Sahani, who will be discussing industry, and we will have a medical expert, but that is to be determined, so stay tuned on that. But my impact on the Future of Medicine event was a promotional plan. So I am figuring out how we can get as many people to come to it as possible, especially in the Western New York community. And how we can get people to come to this event is through social media. I came up with a lot of post ideas throughout my throughout my internship to get people more engaged in the social media and the events that we were holding. And we'll also be holding a webinar contest to help kind of incentivize seeing the webinars that Sarah helped incorporate into the social media. And why is this all so important? with social media and the Future of Medicine podcast and the event. It's important because it helps us to reach a wider audience. Because while we're really well known in the medical community, a large population in Western New York and beyond is virtually unaware of us. So all of these initiatives are critical because it allows for philanthropy, which is the other department that I worked in this summer. Now, knowing that this slide is about philanthropy, do you think that something is wrong with the below statement, open for business? If you answered yes, then you were completely correct. Because as a 501c3 nonprofit, we are not open for business, we are open for philanthropic support. As a 501c3, it is critical that our language reflects that. So it is all about the language. By combining communication and philanthropy, we can craft a message that is catered to people's specific affinity. Someone's affinity is at the heart of why they donate. So they might feel like they're really connected with our educational programs, our engineering department, and feel like they want to be a part of our story because of that. And the reason I'm telling you about affinity is because we are creating an initiative that's called the Grateful Patient and Clinician Champion Initiative that will cater to people's affinity and bringing about a forum for patient testimonials that show how the work that we do at the JI directly impacts the healthcare of patients in Western New York and around the world affected by vascular disease. I also worked on developing content and language for outreach to donors and foundation, so helping to write grants and utilizing my kind of outsider status to cater messages about the JI that people who don't necessarily understand who we are can now understand and be inspired to help us along in our mission. Another thing that I worked on was the 3D tour, which is basically a virtual walkthrough of the JI that includes descriptions of rooms, services that we provide, and our esteemed employees. And I worked on the editing process, so making sure that the language within the 3D tour was able to be understood by all, as well as a rollout plan to kind of bring it to the general public. It is not live yet, but soon you can find it on our website, so stay tuned and look for that. This 3D tour was actually really helpful for me because I worked with it super intimately, and then for one day only, I was able to go into the JI and see what it was all about. And my biggest takeaway from my one-day visit was how unique of a place it is. It really does foster those collisions and kind of puts everyone on an even playing field. I know that I am just the communications intern and Dr. Siddiqui is the chief medical officer, but he made time to sit down with me and talk about my work as an intern. And that really just shows how unique and amazing the JI is, because it allows us to collaborate and talk about it, even if like you're an intern and Dr. Siddiqui's the chief medical officer. And for me, when I went in, it truly solidified how amazing the JI was, and I wanted to, and what they do to improve the community. That being said, it is up to all you attendees to become ambassadors of the JI and help in our mission. So I have created 3 actionable items that you all can do to help us along. One is engage with our social media accounts. Follow us, share what we're posting, comment and tag us in your things. For the JI staff, take pictures of yourself at the JI. People want to engage with you, and you can bring your own audience to have more eyes on our account. The more people who engage with our page, the more they see the people who work there, the more our audience will engage and maybe even feel like they want to donate. 2, subscribe to our podcast. Share with anyone and everyone. We want as many people as we can to watch this podcast, because the more people who understand how the JI fosters opportunities to connect people and improve the future of medicine, the more that they will be able to make informed decisions about their healthcare. And 3rd, emphasize our nonprofit status. We run on philanthropic support, so make sure the language that you use to describe the JI emphasizes that we are open to that support. Use the resources that we have provided to get people interested and invested. That includes the 3D map, the donors page, and Brian Sass, our philanthropy director. And in order to help you along in that, I have created a QR code, so everyone take out your phones and bring up the camera app and then scan this QR code. It will take you to a link that connects you to our social media accounts, our podcast, our donor page, and a lot more really cool things. It is so important that we all take action and do these 3 simple things to make sure that more people know about our mission. If we foster these 3 simple communication collisions, then we can play a role in making the vision to improve treatment in vascular disease in Western New York and the world a reality. Thank you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Allison Cooperman, who will send us off and make the Q&A session start.
So what an amazing summer, right? Brava, ladies, you did fantastic. So if you want to bring up your cameras, everybody, and I now open the floor to questions from the audience. You can, again, can submit your questions in the chat window, the chat feature down there. It either says more or says chat. There's a little icon there. And if you type in some of your questions, I will field them for the interns. So I'll give folks a second. There's something they want to type in there, your burning questions for the interns about their projects, about their summers. All right, well, I have one, if no one else does. So I'll start with Sarah. I'll go kind of in the order that you presented. Oh, wait, there we go. We've got some coming in. Okay, so we have from Pam, what was the most surprising thing you learned during the summer, during your internship this summer? Something surprising.
I can answer this question from at least my perspective. I was able to go on site a couple days a week, and when I did, I realized how young the JI staff was and how many females were a part of the staff. And I think as an engineer, always being one of the few women who are in my engineering class, that was a great thing to see.
Great. Do any of the other interns have what was the most surprising thing you learned?
I think in general, how kind of young our industry and our organization is, and how we kind of have like almost a startup environment, even though we've been around for a little bit, and a lot of people in the medical community know about us. Like I was saying, not a lot of people in Western New York know, but we're doing so many things that directly impact Kaleida Health and our medical community around us. So I think that kind of made me a little bit surprised that not more people around Western New York know what we do.
Emma or Sarah?
Something I found really surprising was just how quickly I kind of caught on to the students that were attending the webinar. Part of my role when the webinar was being in the live session was to kind of give the questions over to Dr. Snyder and ask the questions that people were typing in. And by like episode 4, we would come to a certain section in the webinar and be like, oh, I know this student's gonna ask something about this. And then like, lo and behold, they're asking the question. So just kind of like how I was able to almost like create these connections with these students during the webinar and even on the Slack channel, that it was just really surprising I was able to do that because I wasn't sure in light of everything. So it was really great.
Nice. And Emma, I actually have a question for you. This comes from Jacob Caldwell, who is actually one of our 2016 summer interns. So it's a little technical, so let me read it. For Emma, with a focus on cost for testing, your lower fidelity model looked pretty effective. What is the value add that your higher fidelity test setup would add to the process?
So I think I don't necessarily know that I meant to say fidelity. I kind of more just meant wasn't the exact things that we were supposed to order. So the one thing that would have been better is like the black light that was shown. It was just kind of sitting there and it wasn't really positioned properly. So the higher fidelity, really, it's not really higher fidelity. It's just what we really wanted was a strip of black light. That way it's surrounding the whole model. You have like a 360 view of the lights on the model, so you can clearly see where the dye is flowing. Also, that means you're not plugging it into a wall. Things like that. It's like remote control done, which is great. Also, the manifold was something that someone brought in from their house. So just having actual equipment would have been great, but there wasn't, it's not much different and honestly not much more expensive. It's just slight tweaks that would make doing the process a little bit easier.
Great. And then I have another question coming in for Juliana. Can you think of an example that underscores the importance of quality assurance in product development?
I think that's a great question. I believe quality assurance is integral for any business in any industry. And I guess the first example that comes to my mind is a failure that happened with Boeing on one of their Supermax jets. One of their sensors had failed, and it cost a lot of people their lives. And I think it just shows how rigorous quality assurance can be for essential business people.
Great, thank you. Do we have any other questions from the audience? If not, I always have one. So this one would be for everybody. So the big burning question, why did you all choose the Jacobs Institute for your internship this summer? We can start with Katie.
Yeah, so I was looking on just an internship website where I was like, I don't really know what I'm gonna do. Let's apply to some places. And I found the JI and I didn't really know what it was about. So I looked on the website that was in the link in the internship description. And I really liked seeing like all the emphasis on collaboration. I have been on a team most of my life I've been on a cross country team and I'm just a sporty gal. So I've been athletics all my life. So the emphasis on team and collaboration is what really made me want to work there, because hearing that there were those and that, like I said, that equal playing field, that everyone could talk with each other and bounce ideas off each other and find that new innovation to the future of medicine. I think that's what made me really want to kind of choose the JI in my summer internship.
Great. And Sarah, how about you?
Yeah, so I was pretty similar to Katie. I was just kind of like looking around for internships, and I came across the JI, and I loved like their educational outreach programs that they had. I really wanted like a chance to work with like area high school students, and I was looking, and they have like 10 come down every summer from like schools all over Western New York, which I just thought was amazing. And that opportunity, because I really wanted a chance to like get to know these high school students. It's really easy to like find that position with like little kids. Everyone wants to work with little kids, but I was like high school, and we had the high school educational outreach program with JI. That's just amazing.
And Juliana, how did you find us?
I discovered the JI through actually 2 previous interns. Emily Ludwig actually sat down with me for like a little coffee conversation, so I was able to learn more about what JI did. And then actually Adam Colleen, who went to my college, Purdue University, I met him on campus and he was able to share his experience as well.
Finally.
I kind of already shared that I had heard about the JI 4 years ago. So that's how I heard about that JI, and when I was looking this summer, I'm still kind of figuring out what exactly I want to do, and I think what I was really attracted to with the JI is that Mike and I talked about this during our interview, it's not just straight engineering, it's innovation and looking at problems cross-functionally, and that's what I like a lot. And also just kind of reading the bios of the people working here, I could tell that I was going to be able to learn something from everyone, and everyone sat down with me at some point, even though, well, with masks on and everything, of course, but people sat down and just told me about their experiences, and I learned a lot through that. So I've followed through on what I was thinking.
Great. So I have 2 more questions coming in. This one is from Karen. So what's next for each of you as far as your careers, or maybe it's academics? What from your experience at the JI helped you identify what's next for you in your careers? So here I'll start with Sarah.
Yeah, so I'm going to continue in the UB Teach program where I become a hopeful high school history teacher. The JI experience really helped me learn a lot more about education in a technological era. Just with everything that's going on, technology is such a big part of education and it grows every single year. So I became a lot more comfortable with using education and technology and combining that, and just like creating relationships with high school students just from all over.
Nice. And let's see, how about Katie?
So I will be continuing my master's program at Penn State. where I study communication science as well as completing my master's thesis. So we'll see on that. But I teach public speaking there, and I'm hoping that after I'm done with my master's program, I can come back to Buffalo. And I really love being in like the health communication field. I'm working on a research team right now with that, as well as I've worked at Roswell Park. So being kind of a fast-paced atmosphere where you're promoting such great events like the future of medicine, or figuring out ways to kind of get people's medical innovations to the public. I think that's like a really cool way to kind of make a career. And so I'd really like to be in health communication moving forward, but not sure exactly where yet. Stay tuned on that one.
I'm a big fan of that field, so so I hear you. Let's see, Juliana.
Yeah, so I participate in a rotational co-op program, and so this fall I'll be working remotely with Eli Lilly. In January of 2021, I'll go back to school to finish my last 2 semesters.
Ah, very cool, very cool. And obviously, finally, Emma.
So yeah, I'm going back to school tomorrow and I'm studying mechanical engineering, like we said. I think this summer I've always been kind of I've always been a little bit interested in the healthcare industry, and this kind of solidified that I'm definitely interested in the healthcare industry in general. I think being in a hospital this summer, knowing everything that was going on, felt really rewarding, and I really liked that experience. I think I also learned, I definitely see myself kind of going in business too. So but I think a great foundation is to have engineering and to learn how people think in different fields. So getting to work with engineers, I think, has helped me understand more how engineers are thinking and will help me in the future.
Great. I have a message here from actually our CEO, Bill Maggio, and he said that as CEO of the JI and as vice chairman of Kaleida, well done. So you guys have obviously done a fantastic job, and I'm just really excited that you're able to share your experience. So one last question, and then I'll kind of close things out. Can each of you tell me what was your favorite day or favorite moment at the JI this summer, or with the JI this summer? Let's start with Juliana.
I think one of my favorite days was the day that I was able to sit down with some engineers and show them my communication tool. Being able to share my work with people who will be using it was really powerful and impactful to me, and I love collaborating with others, so getting their feedback was amazing.
Awesome. And Sarah, how about you?
I think one of my favorite days was the first time we launched like the first episode of the webinar series. I wasn't completely sure like what to expect, how it was all going to go down, what Dr. Snyder was going to talk about. And then within the first 5 minutes, he's like, now let's clip an aneurysm. I'm like, yeah, this is great. Like this is going to be a great experience. So I think that's my favorite day.
Awesome. And Katie?
Yeah, I would honestly say my favorite day was when I actually got to come into the JA. I had been virtual the whole time, so I was at like a fold-out table and had my fold-out chair in my living room on my laptop. So actually being to come in and experience it and get a tour and experience Joe's Deli, which was delicious.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So being able to experience all that with like Allison and then Brian, my other kind of supervisor in this, that was really cool to meet everyone in person and then see what the JI was all about that I was reading about and like, you know, doing the social media for and all the other things, but didn't really get to see until I actually went in. So that was a really cool day to actually see all the things that the JI was.
It was so fun to actually see you in person on that day and to realize we were about the same height too. And Emma, so how about you?
I think mine isn't necessarily a one day, but this past week I think has been the most exciting week. I think like last Thursday or something, I had messaged Rick, my supervisor, that I had some time if there was any extra projects I could work on. And he gave me this one project, and at first I was kind of freaking out that they were giving me a whole nother, I thought it was going to be way too much to handle and was way too much for 1 week left. But I think it was working on a tensile test for something else they're doing. And it was really exciting because it let me pivot and start working with other engineers more. So I got to work with Ariane and Dan, who I hadn't been working with as much, and got a lot of life lessons and like really good feedback from Dan, which is great. And so that also meant this last week I was super busy, even though it was the end. I was working on a bunch of things at once, which is really cool to keep doing work until the very end, which was awesome.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, ladies. So a hearty congratulations to you, the 2020 JI Summer Interns. And you all did beautifully. And importantly, you made a real impact at the JI this summer. And we're so glad that you were able to join us for this summer experience, unlike any other, especially this year. So to anybody watching, if you know a college student who's interested in applying for summer 2021, please tell them to visit our website at jacobsinstitute.org. And again, thank you to everybody for spending your afternoon with us. And of course, for hearing from these all-star interns, which we're so pleased were able to join us, and so grateful they will forever be a part of the JI family and join us back for reunions in the future. So thanks, everybody.